Hello and welcome to The Resource, the podcast propelling employer brands to recruit smarter and retain better. I'm your host, Priscilla Peters.
And I'm your other host, Scott Dismuke. Priscilla, happy almost Halloween.
Yes.
Are you dressing up? Are you partying this year?
I always party. We have a little neighborhood party. So I will definitely be there. You know, it's normally my first real bowl of chili for the year, that kind of thing. So, and we'll, hand out candy and all that stuff. Our neighborhood's crazy town at Halloween, like crazy. What about you?
Well, it's kind of a bad, so I usually love Halloween. I usually love giving out candy, but we have a dog and our dog has severe epilepsy.
No.
We try to keep him as calm as possible. So for the last few years, we've not been doing a whole lot because every time we get doorbell rings and people at the front door, the dog goes a little crazy and we don't want him to start having seizures, right? So what I have done, and this is awful, but I have a little fun. I usually put some kind of, because I don't want people coming up ringing the doorbell, even though we turn the lights off and all that kind of stuff. So I'll put a little sign on the door that says, hey, we have a dog with epilepsy. If you ring the doorbell, he might die. So please don't ring the doorbell. And
inevitably.
Nobody's rang the doorbell yet.
Really?
Nobody's rang the doorbell yet.
That's shocking.
So there was a couple times that the wife was out of town doing business, and so I would really have fun with the signs, and I would send those to her, and she's like, "Please tell me you did not put that on the front door." I'm like, "Yes, absolutely, I put that on the front door." So yeah, we don't. But once we don't have a dog, I'm assuming we will go back to giving out candy because that's a lot of fun. So yeah, but I don't normally dress up. I don't normally do that, but I do like giving out candy. Usually what I will do is I will go to the store and I will buy a bunch of candy like we are going to hand it out. And like, oh, I forgot we can't. So then we get to eat it. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So I have a question for you before we get into this. And this is something I've been really wanting to ask you, and I haven't done it.
Oh no.
So I got to know, because I literally have like one of these weeks. What's your biggest pet peeve?
You know what my biggest pet peeve is? I mean, a couple of things. Number one, chewing loudly. I can't. There's a word for it, but it's not no. But my biggest pet peeve, in the workplace, in my work life, is talking, what I call all talk, no action. If we're going to talk about it, let's do it. If we're not going to do it, we don't need to meet over and over about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know I get on everybody's nerves because I'm like, hey, so this is the third meeting we've had about this. We're going to do it or are we not? All talk, no action. I can't. I just, that's my, and honestly, I'm like that in my personal life too. Let's not talk about a vacation we're actually not going to go on, because then I'm just going to be depressed.
And you get excited about it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No,
right.
Absolutely. So yeah, no, I'm with you on the chewing thing. Any kind of mouth noises, but to be perfectly honest with you, I think I have like a pet peeve of the week. It's usually around driving. Like people here in Nashville, it drives me literally, and I'm a great driver, but I'm awful behind the wheel. Like my wife will just disown me. So my short one is, we were talking about the Halloween candy, and this is kind of why I brought it up. We have a neighborhood store. Okay. We have a public supermarket. So we go all the time. And there is this sweet lady that works there. And
oh gosh.
every time you go through the checkout line, she's one of these that has to make comments about what you're buying. Right.
Oh,
so it's like you're coming through and you've got, somebody's having spaghetti tonight, or somebody's having tacos tonight. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about that. I mean, why? And so I've kind of made this my goal, and I'm probably borderline insane here. I've made this my goal, to go through and to get her to not make comments about what I'm buying. Right. And my wife literally would tell me, she'll be like, go through the self-checkout line. There's other lanes. Why do you always choose her? I'm like, well, because now it's my mission in life to get her to not comment on what.
You're going to throw her
I've
off.
tried everything. I've tried putting my AirPods in. I've tried everything. And she just always, and she's just being sweet. She's just being nice. This is just me being an idiot. So I finally figured out a way the other day. The other day where she didn't comment. I bought, and literally this just shows you how crazy I am. I bought a box of X-Lax. I didn't need it. I bought a box of X-Lax and I put it right at the front with
Oh
everything
my
that I'm
gosh.
buying because
Have
I
we
knew.
talked about this before? Like
Yeah,
not on the podcast?
we had talked about it on the podcast because there's other things that
Okay.
I've done. There's other things I've done too that I'm not going to say, but I will say that I did buy the X-Lax and I put it right up at the front. And guess
I
what?
wish she
She
would have
didn't.
commented on it. That's what I wish this story was.
Well,
I wish it
yeah,
was her commenting on it.
yeah, well, yeah. But I wanted to declare my victory because I had finally accomplished what I've been
Okay.
trying to accomplish literally for years. Because this woman's worked there for years, and so I finally accomplished it. She didn't say anything, and so I went home in total victory. So there you go.
So are you well, listen, I'm getting some grumpy old man vibes here a little bit.
Listen, the only thing I have left, the only thing I have left to do to be the grumpy old man is to tell people to get out of my yard. That's the only
Oh.
thing I have left. So I'm almost there, and I've come to that realization.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. Well, I'm glad you got her. I'm
Yeah,
glad you got her,
there you go. So, but yeah. Well, this podcast went downhill really fast. So
I
that's
know, right?
my fault. My bad. So listen, we got a lot of stuff getting ready to come out. We've got our quarterly data that's about to go live. We've got our fall driver survey that's about to go live. We've got the R&R conference, which I know you want to talk about because registration just opened. So
Yeah.
why don't you talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into our data points.
Yeah, and so registration is open for the Recruitment and Retention Conference. It's the largest event of the year for recruiting and retention professionals in transportation. Today's guest is one of our keynotes. So I'm excited to talk to him and see what he has to share with us. So yeah, we opened registration. You can register at annualrrconference.com. It's going to be awesome. Always in Nashville, always in February, always a great time. So we're excited about it. Yeah, we're ready. We're
Yeah.
gonna be ready.
Well, definitely go register. Like I said, I know Priscilla puts this on. They do a great job. Her and her team do a fantastic job. It is the best conference that you can go to if you're in the recruiting and retention space. So make sure you go sign up. I know spots usually go really, really fast. So now that registration's open, go get you a spot because it is the best conference you will go to. I kid you not. And she's not paying me to say that. So you know it's true. All right, folks. So on the resource, we start every episode with 2 must-know data points and resources that will keep you ahead of the curve in your recruiting and retention game. So Priscilla, what game-changing insights do you have for us today?
Yes. So I wanted to share with you some information that I got from our digital media team. So these are the folks that really work on all of our paid campaigns for our clients. So, job postings and what we call search engine marketing, SEM interactive in our case. And so one of the things that they had, information they had was on this analysis of job title trends. And this is very interesting because when you're thinking about, as you're hiring over the road drivers or regional drivers for your motor carrier, it is really important for you to know and understand what you're competing against. And when it comes to job title trends, I can tell you this. There are 3 job title trends that are in transportation, in the driver space, if you will, that have 2 to 3 times as many job seekers as over the road or regional drivers do. And here's those 3: delivery driver, local driver, and shuttle driver. So again, you might be thinking, oh, I don't really compete against them. And in essence, you really kind of don't, right? The persona for your driver as a regional or an over the road type carrier is different than a shuttle driver or a local driver. Maybe you have local jobs that you advertise for. But what is interesting is the number of job seekers is 2 to 3 times more for those 3 job titles than it is for truck driver or, solo driver, owner operator driver, those types of job titles. Now, what that tells me is that the competition we already know the competition's intense, right? With just the other carriers that are trying to hire the same type of driver you are, but you're also competing in a pretty impactful way against folks that are hiring local drivers and delivery drivers and shuttle drivers, even though, like I said, they're probably not looking for the same type of driver you are. They're in the mix, especially the local driver job title. And so I just think it's important. One of the things we hear from fleets all the time is that we're losing our drivers to local jobs. And I know some of this data that we're going to be releasing, and even some of our the driver survey data that we're going to cover in next month's episode, and we'll be releasing that soon. We specifically asked drivers, like, if you had, related to how, if they were willing to make a move to make less money but be home more, and vice versa, like what do their opinions on that look like? So we're going to have some insight into that. But this competition with local drivers that's significant, I think.
Yeah, and I think we started seeing a lot of that during COVID.
Yeah.
You started seeing a lot of delivery jobs and local jobs that drivers, and mainly just for home time. Let me ask you a question. You may not have the answer to this. How much of this do you think is generational, meaning a younger generation of drivers coming into the industry that obviously home time and work-life balance is a priority? How much of that do you think maybe comes into play with some of that?
Oh, I think it definitely comes into play. We don't necessarily have data to quantify that yet. That's something that we could look into and kind of dig up, but it definitely comes into play.
Yeah.
The whole work-life balance, just generationally across all work culture, is quite different. You and I have a different take on work-life balance as the Gen Xers that we are, versus the millennials and the Gen Zs of the world, for sure.
Yeah. So my data point is kind of a little bit of a teaser as it relates to our Q3 data that's going to be coming out here, I think in the next probably 24 hours as you're watching this. So obviously, for the last year, ever since we started doing this podcast, we've been talking about the economy. We've been talking about the freight recession, and we've been talking about, do we see signs that we're coming out of it? And I still think that there's, some small signs that we're beginning to emerge from this. Obviously, we've had some incidents recently. We're, in the middle of, at least as we're recording this, we've got the East Coast and Gulf port strike. We've got the hurricane that was so awful that came through and has affected, Florida and East Tennessee and North Carolina and South Carolina, just several things that are going on that obviously is going to impact freight. It's going to impact the freight economy. But in looking at our Q3 data, one of the interesting things that we saw is that driver complaints regarding compensation actually did drop from Q2 to Q3. But as we dug into that, what we saw is that the thing that went up the most is drivers complaining about mileage related compensation issues. It was up to 60%. 60% of the drivers that complained about compensation directly tied it to miles. And that was up from Q2. And really the things that they're complaining about the most, the four things that we saw the most, is the sitting and waiting for a load, inconsistent miles, loads not available, and then deadhead miles. The deadhead miles is something that we have not seen, at least any time recently, but we're starting to see drivers a little more frustrated from the deadhead mile side of things. So, I think that while there are some encouraging signs that we're slowly starting to emerge from the freight recession, obviously the drivers are not yet quite seeing or feeling that. And I think that's been reflected in kind of the feedback that we got from those drivers in Q3 is related to their compensation and how it's been affected by the miles or lack of freight. So that was the thing that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had a conversation with a carrier last week, and we were talking about how folks are getting creative with, they don't want to increase pay, but they want to do some creative things from a compensation standpoint that will help differentiate them. And deadhead miles came up as things they're looking at in, how do we pay drivers for these miles? Do we not? Do we, how do they approach that? So that, I think it's really interesting to look at and just see. And a lot of our driver survey that, like I said, that we're going to cover in the next episode and that's getting ready to be released is about pay and their opinions on some things related to compensation. So that'll be good to kind of piggyback off of that. So that's great. That's great. All right. Well, we have a great guest today. You ready to kind of dive in and meet with him?
Let's bring him in.
All right. So, y'all, we are in for a real treat today. Joining us on today's episode is an esteemed author and global speaker. He is going to be one of our keynotes at the upcoming R&R conference. We could not be more excited to welcome Eric Termuende to the show. Welcome to the show, Eric.
You know what? Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this since the email first came into the inbox. That wasn't until I saw your questions, which I'm terrified about. This is going to be a great conversation. I'm grateful to be here.
Yes.
And terrified, and he hadn't even got to the final five yet.
I know.
So
listen.
Here we go. Buckle up, everyone.
Yes, buckle up. There you go. Well, we're excited to have you. Tell us just a little bit about your background before we kind of dive into all the business that we have for today.
Background, about 10 years ago, I started my HR consulting company. We built a tool that quantified workplace culture. So we put numbers behind the employee experience. And we worked with various industry associations to help their member organizations differentiate their culture. You know, what we found is that organizations across the country, they might be competing for skills. But what we found is they're likely not competing for talent. What do I mean by that? You might need a bookkeeper at the company. You might need an HR advisor. You know, you could be in forestry, you could be in transportation, you could be in apparel, you could be in consulting, you could work at Starbucks. You could do any of these things. And you know, the HR advisor and the payroll person is equally important. The job is very similar, but the experience at work is very different. And so when we can differentiate culture, which I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about today too, we'll realize that we don't have to be everything to everyone. We could be exactly who we need to be to attract and keep the right people. And so I've been speaking about this topic, attracting and retaining talent, for the better part of the last decade. I've been on just over 550 stages now, working with category leading companies, including the ones that will be in Nashville in February, helping them prepare for the future of work and build great teams along the way.
Yes. Well, we're very excited, and we'll talk about R&R a little bit later, but we're excited just to have you on the show today and get kind of a sneak peek and really pick your brain about recruiting and retention for truck drivers. And so, but before we get to that, we are excited to have you here. But first, let's hit our final mile first five, sponsored by driver.jobs, your destination for hiring the drivers you need for your final mile operations. Driver.jobs, matching the right drivers with the right opportunities for every last mile. All right. So this is our first five, Eric. These are very serious questions. I hope you're ready.
I'm ready. Hit me.
Okay. Number one.
Actually, I don't know that I'm ready, but hit me anyways. Yeah.
Number one, what is your favorite Halloween candy? And
you're gonna love this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Tell me one you love and one you can't stand.
Okay. Well, I'm a Canadian, which, you know, I take that for what it is, but I love Coffee Crisp. And the truth is, you don't have Coffee Crisp.
We do not.
South of the 49th parallel. But Coffee Crisp is like, think of it as like a Kit Kat that's like stacked. So like it's a square. It's got a little coffee, sort of vanilla flavors in there, but it's nice and light, almost like a Kit Kat. Number one favorite chocolate bar for sure.
Coffee Crisp.
I'm going to have to see if I can order that on Amazon. I want to try that.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to bring a box down to Nashville in February and I'm just going to hand them out. Yeah, that'll be great.
Listen. Okay, so we'll make sure and put a link to the show notes. We will find the Coffee Crisp. Okay, what do you hate, Eric? What's one you hate?
What's that one? It's like, is it like Babe Ruth or something? The one with like jam in the middle? Like which one's that? Like it's got like a raspberry sort of jam in the middle.
I don't know. Does Baby Ruth have jam or is it a nugget? Don't they call it nugget?
Nougat.
Oh, nougat.
Either. Did I say Babe Ruth? That's hilarious.
Baby Ruth.
Either one, yeah. Get those away. You know,
yeah.
Anything with that feel, anything that's like not just like wafer, chocolate, caramel, anything that's not the staple fillings, I'm out. No good.
All right. I can deal with that.
Scott, like, what's you? Priscilla, what's yours? Like, let's just go favorites, just so I can get a flavor for both.
I'm Snickers. I mean, like either Snickers or Reese's or Reese's. I don't know what you call it anymore, but anything like a peanut butter cup or a Snickers, I'm in. I don't like candy corn by themselves, but if you put candy corn with peanuts, it tastes like a payday. So if you like payday, I can do that, but not candy corn by themselves.
That is not true. I don't know where you got that, but I love a payday and I hate candy corn and peanuts together. But I like the Reese's cups too. I say Reese's, not Reese's, but
I'd say Reese's as well.
I'd say Reese's.
I mean, Will Arnett says Reese's. Or maybe he says Reese's. I don't know what he says. Anyway, okay.
Will Arnett, we're talking another Canadian, by the way. Just as another side note.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
And Will we trust, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So the second one, we kind of go really deep here after we talk about candy. So if you could time travel, would you visit the past or the future?
Where am I going?
Yeah. If you could time travel, would you go back to the past or would you go to the future?
It's funny. I was having this conversation with a few friends just last week, and our friend group was split, which that's neither here nor there. I chose the past, but I'm going to qualify this a little bit more. I would probably choose 1995. I feel like you wouldn't have that fear of missing out. You're kind of there. You're present with your friends. There's no place you'd rather be. I kind of admittedly get this feeling now where, we're hanging out with our pals. We're in a cool spot. We're, having the best time ever. And you still can't help but feel, what is somebody else doing too? I feel that entire emotion, that fear of missing out would be completely gone. On the flip side, though, a close second would be the future, but 25 years into the future. If we're going to go to the future, let's go out a couple of decades, because I think that, we're dealing with a loneliness epidemic. We're dealing with depression, anxiety, mental health issues, greater than they've ever been before in the country. And I think that, we've gone through this honeymoon phase of technology, and I think the pendulum is starting to swing back now. I'm medium term, short to medium term, not as optimistic as I am about medium to longer term. And we'll call these horizons 10 or 15 year horizons. We're not talking hundreds of years. So I'd say 1995 or 2050. Let's say that one.
Okay. I like it. Okay. So number 3, what is your guilty pleasure TV show or movie? What's your guilty pleasure? What are you binging?
What am I binging? I haven't been a huge TV guy, but if I'm looking for that easy, laugh, it's just been a long day. Yeah, I'm probably throwing a Family Guy on, laughing at some things that I probably shouldn't. It's super easy. The episodes are short. My attention span is very comparable to a goldfish. So anything longer than that, I'm probably going to fall asleep or move on to the fridge or something like that. Family Guy is a nice, easy 22-minute hit.
You're right though. I love a little Family Guy, but you're right. There's some times I'm probably shouldn't laugh at that, but
especially older seasons, right? I was just I was watching an older season a few weeks ago. I was like, they could not do that today.
Nope.
No way.
Nope. You're exactly right. All right. So if you could attend any concert, past or present,
oh man,
which one would it be, or who would it be?
Past or present, anyone ever? I think it would have been insane to be somewhere in the back at Woodstock 99, just to be an observer of how crazy that would be. Now, granted, I want to sort of qualify everything. I'm a 210-pound white male who's, middle-aged right now. And I think that wasn't a safe environment to be for a lot of people. And so I just think for me, that would have been an incredible one. The other one that I want to see, and I'm hoping that he tours again, is just Eminem. I have had that guy on the top of my list for a long time. I just think, a lot of us sort of grew up with a lot of his stuff, and I think it'd be cool to see.
There's a great documentary on Netflix about Woodstock 99.
I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. It was crazy.
It was crazy. I'm not that sort of front row kind of guy, but to observe, I just imagine the energy at that place would have been so also one of a kind, and again, I'm not that front row getting the mosh pit kind of guy. I'm more of a stand at the middle 3/4 back thing, but just to experience what that energy would have been crazy.
Yes, for sure. Okay. One last one for our first 5. If you could instantly become an expert at something, what would it be?
Reading my wife's mind.
Oh, good one, Eric. You didn't even flinch. You were like, you knew that one. That's a good one.
How long have you been married? Because that is a perfect answer.
Oh my gosh, I can't even disclose that. You're going to think of me as if I'm crazy. We've been married for about 18 months. I think I just sort of see the writing on the wall here. We got to have the rest of our life. I want to make sure that I'm planting the seeds and watching them grow. And I feel that if I can start to read her mind now, then it's going to only help me in the years to come, right?
Yeah, so I've been married almost 25 years, and that is a brilliant answer. And you are so spot on. And to know it that early in your marriage, you're gonna be just fine, man. You're gonna be just fine. What do you think about that, Priscilla?
I love that answer. Like, I love the fact that it took him 0.02 seconds to give us the answer. Like, he knew immediately. So even better. So yeah, no, I love that one. I was thinking like math. Like for me, it would be math or something like that.
Well, I'm thinking like, as you were asking the question, do I take like a cerebral route and say like Roman history? I'm thinking that wouldn't help me as much. Like math would be good, but like, anyway, so I went that direction.
I love it. I love it.
To it. Solid answer. All right. Well, you have completed the first questions there. So we're going to move on now to, I think, the substance of everything, a little more of a serious discussion. So let's go into that.
Sure.
So, Eric, first question here. So our industry boasts, or some would say, downplays the impact of a 70 to 90% turnover rate that we have with the truck driver profession and ultimately the transportation industry. If you were running a trucking company today, what would be maybe one of the first steps that you would take to improve truck driver retention?
Yeah, it's a great question, Scott. And it's a problem that I think does have a solution. I'm going to make a bit of a comparison to start before I get into the solution. The comparison also is the solution. But, the three of us go to our favorite steakhouse. Maybe we're going to Kane in downtown Nashville, right? And we've been there 100 times before. It's our favorite spot in town. And we've developed our favorite meal each. Then we go back to Kane for the 101st time, and something comes out just slightly different than we expect. Now, if it had been our first time, we would have loved that meal. But because it was our 101st, we knew exactly what to expect, and the meal fell a little bit short, we're disappointed. And what I found is that disappointment is only ever realized when expectations aren't met. This happens in our personal lives. This happens in our professional lives. And I found that quite often when we have a turnover rate that's that high, there's a mismatch of expectations and what's actually experienced. And so, what I think happens, and this is certainly not limited to the industry. I see this in every corner of the country. I see that career pages and about us pages, they kind of like promise the world. They say, we're a best place to work. We have this strong and thriving culture. And, we want you to be an integral part of the team. And it's not that that's not true. It's that it's not really articulated in a way that's tangible, that allows the drivers to actually see how they're going to be a part of that team. And what happens is that disappointment is realized because these expectations aren't met. So to answer your question a little bit more directly, what would I do? I would cherry pick drivers from my team, and I would start to showcase what a day in the life of actually looks like. I would quantify it as much as possible. How many miles do you drive? How many days of the week are you on the road? How many people are you talking to? How much collaboration? How much cooperation is there? And I would actually start, and again, this doesn't have to cost tens of thousands of dollars by any means, but I would actually look at even recording a short day in the life of video. I would interview these people. And by the way, again, this can be done with an iPhone if you wanted to do it that way. And just have more transparency about what the actual experience is. Because if statistically you're going to turn over your entire driver base in about 14 months anyways, why don't those next folks that we bring in know exactly what they're signing up for and agree to it before they sit in that seat and turn the key on? That's where I think we're going to make the biggest change, is by managing expectations, increasing transparency, and letting people know, hey, if this is what you want to be a part of, wonderful. We've got this exact experience for you. And if it's not, no problem. We're saving both of us some time in realizing that maybe before you get into that truck, we're being a little bit more clear about the expectations.
Yeah, no, that's true. Expectations, I think, are key. So along those same lines, when we survey truck drivers we do a biannual survey. Matter of fact, we're getting ready to release our fall survey. That will be our next episode. Scott and I are going to be covering that. But one of the common themes that shows up is the lack of trust that drivers have in recruiters and operations teams. So you're a leader in workforce culture. What do you believe could be some of the root causes of the distrust between truck drivers and recruiters?
Okay, Priscilla, can we get a little clarification on that? When you say trust, what do you mean? Do you mean the individuals? Do you mean where is that lack of trust really coming from?
Yeah. So when we ask them, what would you improve in the recruiting process? If we did a word cloud of what the answers they gave us, it would be like, stop lying, tell me the truth, just be honest, And so the driver is, and it kind of coincides with what you talked about earlier. They're feeling like what you're selling me is not actually what you're delivering. And so I don't know, when you think about that from the organizations that you work with and the groups that you kind of collaborate with, what are some of those root causes, and what could our listeners really look at when it comes to that?
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind. Number one is education, and two is empathy. I say education because there's often just a gap in information. One party doesn't understand the other party. So the operators don't understand the driving experience. The drivers don't understand the operating, the support, the logistics experience. I'm going to go ahead and guess that nobody on either side is trying to be malicious, is trying to ill-advise, is trying to break trust, which means that there's just has to be an information gap that needs to be closed. The second thing is there also has to be an empathy gap that's closed. Again, I'm going to assume the best intentions from both sides of the team here and say that, look, if we actually understood where each other was coming from, if we understood the constraints, if we understood some of those roadblocks, no pun intended, if we understood some of those sort of pitfalls and understood that, hey, look, we're trying to help each other out and we have our best foot forward, we have the very best intentions, then I think we can close that gap. Now, how do we do that? I think the fastest way to speed up connection, to speed up trust, is actually to slow down. And I think that the fastest way to build up trust with respective parties is to talk more about our lives outside of work, not just work as well. The faster we can learn about wives and husbands and kids, the faster we can learn about hobbies, goals, objectives, dreams, the faster we can learn about hopes, dreams, goals, ambitions. I probably said dreams twice. The faster we can build that trust, the faster we can build that empathy, and the faster we can build that mutual understanding. The truth is we have a lot more in common with each other than we probably think. The problem is we just don't have the conversations required to actually build that empathy and build that trust bridge. If we increase education and increase empathy, I think we can also increase trust quite quickly.
Well, spot on. We could end it right now. That is spot on. I totally agree. So over the past year, when we look at online reviews with, particularly with trucking companies, the culture has been a common keyword that is showing up in those truck driver reviews, both positive and negative. What are some practical ways that motor carriers can build a culture of trust? I mean, I think that seems to be the theme that we're going on here, is a lot of trust. What is some practical ways that motor carriers can build a culture of trust with their drivers?
Well, in the same way that you said some folks love and some folks, are not happy with culture, I've really got like a love-hate word or relationship with the word culture. Because if we go to Netflix, let's just say, or a tech company in the Silicon Valley, culture means something a lot different than it does on a construction site, for sure. And I'm not here to tell you that one is better than the other. I think we can all agree that they're very different. And I think the folks that love culture align with whatever the company, whatever the organization means by culture. I think the ones that hate culture don't align with whatever the organization defines their culture to be, which means, again, we've got an information gap. If we really wanted to improve culture, whatever that might mean, we have to first concretely define it. Like, what in the world does culture mean here? Does this mean that, all the drivers are going to be on the road? They're going to be completely autonomous. They're not going to have any interaction or relationship with the rest of the team. If that's what it means, great, be proud of that. If that's not what it means, and it means something drastically different, we got to put parameters around what in the world this culture thing means, from dress and attire to communication to performance management and feedback. The only way we can improve anything is if we measure it in the first place. And the problem with the ambiguity of culture is that it just means too many things. define it. Don't just talk about mission, vision, values, which I think, we've been talking about that for 20 years now. It's not that it's not important. It's that it can still be vague and ambiguous. Like, instead of just talking about the things that we value, talk about the actions that are exemplified that ultimately make these values come true. Like, how do we know if we're actually living out of integrity or innovating or whatever that one word of our values might be? As soon as we can actually bring that down to the ground level, to the road level, and actually measure against what those values are, what the culture is, only then will we be able to actually attract and keep people that we can actually continue to tie back to whatever it is we define culture to be.
Yeah, no, that's great. I can't wait to hear you expound on some of this at the conference. I think it's going to be great. Okay, so before we kind of let you go for today, we've got one last question for you. Recently, you've been speaking all over the world. I love, for those of you who are watching the video, you can see behind Eric, he's got all of his badges from all the places he's been. And you really kind of talk to organizations and groups about the future of work. And so what are some of the common threads across the multiple industries that you're encountering when it comes to the future of work?
Yeah, Priscilla, look, it's a good question, and I'm gonna take it a bit different, and we can circle back to what you said, because look, I could say the same thing everyone else is going to say. I could say, oh, technology is changing really quickly, and artificial intelligence is going to enter the workforce, and the talent shortage is here, and retirements are high. Like, I could say all the things that you were going to expect me to say. The one thing that everyone has in common is that we're unsure of what tomorrow's going to bring. I don't know, and neither do you, what the weather is going to do this afternoon, despite our very best guess and our weather people's, best analysis. We're probably still going to be surprised. What does that tell us? It tells us that whatever technology is coming into the fray is unexpected. It's going to be transformative. I don't know if it's today. I don't know if it's 5 years from now. I don't know if it's 5 decades from now. But when I look at the future of work, what I really look at is more of the human and leadership side of things. And my firm belief is that if we can build a team that's rooted in trust, that feels psychologically safe, that can share their ideas when they have them, and they don't fear that conflict that's required to get us to tomorrow, then it doesn't matter what the future of work is going to bring. It just doesn't matter, because we know as change is coming around every corner, if we've got a team that trusts each other, that can share their best ideas, and that can, we'll put in sort of air quotes or small I, innovate every single day of the week, then we'll be able to navigate whatever the future of work brings together. That's really what this whole thing has to be about. That's why we have to build trust. That's why we have to decrease this turnover rate. That's why we have to increase transparency, because the future, regardless of the industry or sector or size of the company that we're working in, if the future is ever changing and only changing faster, trust is going to be the secret weapon that gets us to where we need to go.
Yes, that's great. Well, thanks so much, Eric. This has been awesome. Like I said, I'm excited. This has been a little sneak peek into what you're going to share with us in February at the conference. And so we're super excited. Has anyone ever told you before that you remind them of Jimmy Fallon?
Like really? I don't laugh at near as much.
The cadence of your voice. Like I'm like the whole time I'm sitting there going, who does he remind me of? It's not really necessarily what you look like, but the way, the like cadence of the way that you talk. I'm like, Jimmy Fallon. That's what it is. Anyway.
I will take it. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, he's a phenomenal interviewer, and I'm just looking forward to coming to see you in Nashville here in just a few months.
Yes, we're excited. Well, thanks so much, and we will see you in just a few months in Nashville.
Can't wait. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed the show, then give us a virtual high five by leaving a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss one of our episodes.
And if you've got questions or feedback, you can reach out to us on social media, or you can drop us an email at the email address in the show notes. And we will be back next time with more fun data and insights to help you master your recruiting and retention game. Everybody have a great Halloween, and we will see you soon.